Today we're taking a look at the Be Quiet Pure Base 501DX Midtower case, courtesy of Be Quiet. The 501DX is the latest revision in the 500 series of Midtower cases for gaming and workstation builds from Be Quiet. This case is designed well for air cooling, but it absolutely supports water cooling and AIOs if that's what you're into. In terms of its overall size, we are maintaining a relatively small footprint here, looking at about 17.7 inches long, 9.1 inches wide, and 18.23 inches tall. And this case weighs in at just 17.48 pounds with a glass side panel. Side panel quality was nice, held in with captive screws. It was easy to install and remove in my opinion. I do like that this case includes 3 of the 140mm PWM Pure Wing 3 fans. These are very high quality fans, and they're actually pre-installed in a nice configuration. You've got one intake, one rear exhaust, and one top exhaust. As for the specs on these fans, they can spin up to 1200 RPM. At the starting range, they can produce 57.4 CFM, and if you want to spin them all the way up to 1200 RPM, they can actually achieve 97.5 CFM. At max speed, we can get about 0.96 millimeters to H2O out of these fans in terms of static pressure. These fans are also truly quiet. At max speed, they only generate about 22 dBA each, which is very solid in my opinion, especially when you consider the kind of flow and pressure rating that we're getting. Even with 3 of these installed, it's definitely still going to be relatively quiet. When you combine these fans with the overall design, lots of mesh, for the Pure Base 501DX, we're definitely going to get some solid airflow and pressure throughout the case, which means that you should have no issues air cooling a system in here or water cooling. As for my test case, I'm going to be running the Be Quiet Pure Loop 2 280mm AIO on my Ryzen 9600X. With the all-in-one water cooler installed as a front mount, I ended up moving that front intake fan to be a top exhaust, so now I have 2 top exhaust fans to help maximize the flow and the pressure of air throughout the case. This helped keep the temps down on the CPU, and it increased the flow from reusing that front intake fan to help exhaust more air out of the top of the case, which was an overall benefit to the GPU temperatures as well, since my GPU, like most other GPUs, will throw heat off into the case, generally speaking, in the upwards direction. Like I said though, if you did want to air cool your CPU in this case, absolutely, that's going to work very well. You've got plenty of fan installation points, and we're getting 3 solid fans included. If you did want to go air cooling, you could definitely toss in something like a Be Quiet Pure Rock Pro 3, a dual tower, modest heatsink on your CPU, and like I said, relocate that, and you could even relocate that top exhaust fan to be in the front, so you have 2 front-mounted intake fans. You can really configure it however you'd like. This case also includes an optional fine front mesh air filter. It's behind that front fascia of the case. You don't have to use it if you don't want, but if you have pets or maybe kids or you just live in a dusty area, this is definitely something that you're going to appreciate. Just remember that it is a maintenance item and you probably want to look at it every 6 months to 1 year just to make sure your airflow is being maintained. Of course, as Gaben mandates, all gaming rigs should have some RGB. It's very important. As for the front panel of the case, the outer RGB lines are pretty slick looking in my opinion. I'm a huge fan of the minimal but clean illumination that Be Quiet typically puts in their cases. As for the inside of the case, we don't have those nicely diffused RGB elements. We do have just a couple of LEDs, I think it's like 9 or 10, but the way that they're installed, they're kind of recessed in between a little gap between the fan mounting area and the side panel of the case. And when I look at my computer basically in the dark or low light situations, they really do make the inside of the PC shine pretty nicely. It's also nice that Be Quiet is including an ARGB controller hub. Basically, I connected all of these to my motherboard, including that ARGB controller, and I can cycle through a bunch of different modes just by clicking that top button. Definitely appreciated. I don't have to buy any accessories, and I don't actually have to install any bogus RGB software. In my opinion, as the RGB lighting goes in this build, I really like it. Speaking of that front I/O panel though, we are getting one USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C port, two USB 3.2 Type-A ports, and a combined 3.5mm audio port, as well as that ARGB controller button, and of course a power and a reset button. Not bad in my opinion, definitely an optimized essentials list here. The only wish list item that I would ask for would of course be a second USB Type-C port, but considering the overall budget of this case and where it's marketed, I honestly think this selection is relatively good. In terms of actually building inside of the PureBase 501DX, it was relatively easy, but I do want to mention that cable shield or bracket that's basically installed in line with where the cables would kind of bend when they're coming out from the motherboard. That did kind of get in the way, but it's not a huge deal. When I went to install my motherboard, it is a full ATX board. I wasn't able to get it past that, so I ended up just removing that exhaust fan, installing the motherboard, and then reinstalling that fan. It does help hide that main 24-pin harness cable and some of those accessory cables that kind of come off the motherboard front facing but have to immediately make a 180-degree turn. I do like this feature. It's just a little cramped feeling if you don't remove that rear fan. Another interesting feature of this case is that it does actually support two 3.5-inch drives. Not a super common thing anymore, but a lot of us do still have those. If you need to use them, you'll be installing them basically underneath the PSU shroud and the little hard drive cage that's included. We've also got a 2-drive mounting bracket on the back side of the case attached with a thumb screw. Definitely a nice add-on in my opinion. As far as my typical builds go, I definitely use NVMe drives for the operating system, but if I need bulk SATA storage for like games or something like that, I'll typically use an older SATA SSD, so it's definitely nice to see that we have two there. As for the back side of the case, it was relatively easy to work over here as well. We've got nice cable management and routing options, and there's even some included Velcro, and at that, there's like 5 or 6 pieces, which is definitely super nice to see. My 9600X really had no issues staying in about the mid-70s with PBO enabled, and all the system fans set to about 65% during most of my benchmarks. The RTX 3060 that I have is an EVGA model, and at full tilt with all of the voltage and wattage settings turned up, I think it can use something like 200 watts. It was able to run relatively quiet while under load and testing. I just left it at the stock fan curve, and I was hitting about the same type of GPU core bins that I was hitting in the much larger 701 case. So generally speaking, I was getting enough air to help cool that GPU. I'm relatively happy with the performance and the overall sound output. I measured it while under load after about 20 minutes with my S25 Ultra phone, about 2.5–3 feet away with the Sound Meter app, and I got about 35–36 dBA, which is relatively quiet in my opinion for a system under load. Right now it looks like this case is coming in at about $120 on Amazon at the time that I made this video. I think that's a solid price for a well-designed case that's including 3 140mm PWM fans and has some tasteful RGB elements. Nothing in this case feels cheap, and there are no sharp edges. It was built very well in my opinion. So if you're looking for a Midtower for an ATX gaming build scenario, I would definitely recommend this one to you. You can buy this case in a couple of different variants. I'll link some of that below, so definitely head down there and check that out. If this video helped you out with your case purchasing decision, go ahead and drop a like on it. That helps the channel because it lets YouTube know to share this with other people who are researching gaming PC cases. If you're into gaming PC stuff or the occasional home lab content, make sure to get subscribed and ring that bell for notifications. There's quite a bit on the channel already, so definitely make sure to check that out as well. Until next time, keep on gaming.